Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and welcome. I turned that one off too. I think. Yeah, it's on. Okay. Welcome back. A couple of weeks ago we had our Savior's Day celebration, and it was a huge success, especially out of what I expected of it. You know, I don't like being in a smaller room and things are smaller, but we wasn't promised popularity. Imam Mohammed used to tell us that, and when I was a young man, he used to say, "Well, if it was two people in here, I would come here for these two people." But we got a beautiful, very beautiful community that has a history and knows the true value of what Savior's Day is. And I still have hope and aspirations about how I want to see it evolve as to something that's uniquely ours. You know, we have holidays. We're going to be on holiday tomorrow. I think it's Pulaski Day. But the Savior's Day is uniquely ours, you know. And the values and the things, the powerful messages that some of you all may have heard before in this room, not to say, you know, anything about age, but I think it's maybe necessary. Some of the messages you all heard and has held you all since before I was born. I wasn't even here when you first heard Honorable Elijah Muhammad or one of his ministers or Malcolm X or whoever. Some people give credit for those powerful life-giving messages. Like I was just thinking about earlier. He said the believers were, my own self is a righteous Muslim. So I thought about that. How many times did I hear Imam Mohammed mention that? That's one of the things that he would say that we used to say, my own self is a righteous Muslim. So I'm thinking, how come he didn't just keep saying, because who don't want to, who can't identify with it? Just could you imagine the power of that? This is why the powerful people that don't want to see the influence of Honorable Elijah Muhammad grow too much and produce more people like Malcolm X, Minister Farrakhan, Imam Warithudeen, Muhammad, you know, producing these great giant leaders of morality. So I looked it up, and in the Bible, it has a lot to do with righteousness. Has a lot to do with the attribute of God. So that's why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used the word righteous. And then we say my own self is a righteous Muslim. And you know, most and only Muslims identify with the term Muslim. But righteousness, period, just means moral, being a moral being. That's what separates us from animals. So could you imagine if we all still identified and said that, you know, I'm a righteous person or I'm a righteous human being, you know? And usually the devil comes up and tries to corrupt that. But that's one thing. Righteousness is one thing that's pretty solid. You know, saying I'm a believer, I'm a Muslim. But you don't have to be a believer to be righteous, you see? So righteousness is something very valuable and important to society. And that's just one aspect of the moral tenets of the Nation of Islam that started in the early years, that we identify our life as a celebration of our whole life when you speak of Savior's Day. So I think Savior's Day is something, and usually when you hear somebody opposing it, like, what y'all need that for? What's that for? You know, that's something you should pursue. We know, we've been black long enough to know that if somebody trying to discourage you, it's something in it for you, personally for you, you know. So we know better than that, and I think that that even instilling those things into our children, to identity, because I even think, you know, of all the things that I carry with me, it's usually those things you carry in your subconscious that might not be always on your tongue all the time. You might not go around saying it, but it's who you are, the essence of who you are, and what you believe is what sticks with you. And I'm thinking to myself, because I look around and I see that our generation, we're they call us Generation X, right? Yeah, the descendants or the children of the baby boomers and all. So there's a lot of young men and women, because of the baby boomers, represented a growth in the society or the public, and we represent their children. But where are we? You know, I'm like, wow, you don't see us, and we supposed to be somewhere, and not the welfare line, you know, and or prison, you know. So so a job been done on us, on our generation, and then it makes you wonder, you know, why am I still here? You know, why did I survive? And I think it's basic things like that, you know. So at Savior's Day, if we didn't do nothing but celebrate and say, here's my gift to you, we got a apple, some nice apples that don't have no bruises and no worms. And they actually, the farmers and things, they have some of the most beautiful fruit, man. I went in Georgia the other day, and I lived, you could throw a rock I could throw a brick at Jewel and hit it from my house. So I grew up at Jewel's. I was the next door neighbor. There wasn't houses on the next side. It was Jewel's parking lot. And man, that fruit and vegetables, everything was so beautiful. And that's a trend, not just Jewel, but the even well, I ain't gonna talk about our store. It's good. It's getting there. They can do better. But most of these grocery stores, we're living in a new time where you can get fresh vegetables if you got a job. And that's another thing. A lot of my generation are jobless, you know. Although they talk about the economy improving and jobs going up, but actually for African American people, unless it's changed since the last time I heard that our joblessness is increasing. That you know, although while the economy of the country is improving, and we know that's no accident, and it's so important. The reason I'm talking about this is because, you know, my father did with the same thing. He said, well, I hope that when I came out here, I noticed what he's thinking, that I was going to be speaking to my supporters, my followers, or whatever. And he said, well, I see only a handful of them came out, so he'll go to the next town and he'll say the same. He'll repeat his message, you know, and because you know, we can't be defeated, you know, and you know, it's we believe we doing our lives work. This ain't about me. We doing this for Allah's sake. And one of the brothers in the room, it might have been you, said earlier that if you don't remind the people, and it's right on the thing with the Noah's Flood, the book, the latest of the Imam Mohammed's lecture series that we just published. It's over 200 some pages, right? But Noah's Flood, he talks about if you don't, it's the fault of the leadership, and family, parents are leaders, you know. If you don't teach the children about the circumstances at which the struggles that we came from, they're going to repeat it. It's the same thing will happen in their life, only now it's going to be worse because things are faster, it's more moving faster, times are modern, and lack of self-education on your history of yourself, being a minority, is even more of a famine in that area. The young people don't know nothing about African American people because the world is telling them that that's a drum beat you didn't heard before, and we tired of listening to it. And basically, they don't see it as we're on our own. They see it as it ain't necessary. And we was talking for about maybe 15, 20 minutes before the program started. There was a few of us in the room, and there's a callousness towards African American men. And we were trying to figure it out. That didn't exist. I respected all men. If you were bigger or older than me, then my upbringing taught me that you deserve my respect, and especially if you carried yourself. You know, you could have been just maybe a few inches taller than me, maybe a few months older than me, but if you speak like a responsible person, a mature person, we listen. Say, hey, y'all, we got to get out of this room, and y'all stop making all that noise. I would listen to the older person. A little guy come in, we might say, man, what you doing? You know, but the big guy come in, you listen. But now the young black African American men, you speak to them and talk to them, they so suspicious of you. You know, it's almost like you've been villainized, like you the bad guy. I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, well, these youngsters, they think I'm the bad guy. You ain't seen no bad guys, you know. So that's another thing. They live in a closed world, you know, under mommy's protection and watching television. And they think everything's hunky-dory until they try to get a job, you know. So we have to prepare our children for the future, or else, you know, they're going to be in bad shape. Unless they blessed to, you know, the society has things in place where there is equality. We live in it is a democratic process. But what about uh, those that aren't fortunate enough to get a good education, to happen to go and speak to an employee that happens to, like your personality or like you? Some African Americans, people look at them and you fit a stereotype. So they wouldn't hire you no way. I don't care how nice you are. You just look like the black guy that we think supposed to be in jail or dead. And that's really how they feel about you, and it's a surprise. It's sometimes a shock, and at the least, it damages self-esteem to the point where our youth feel that before they even get a chance, they've been defeated. So they're going to take a lesser role. I was watching a television program, and I felt good. It was most of the TV shows, these reality shows, the business owners be Caucasians, and they build $1 million cars, and people taking an old junk car and putting $100,000 in this. And I said, "This is a young brother, look like a teenager." I said, "You usually don't see that." And he ain't sweeping the floor. He was doing some mechanic work, cleaning up, breaking down the car. And the next thing you know, a Caucasian young man, all the seniors were gray hair, older, the mechanics, adult men about probably my age or younger. But this teenager, then they sent a Caucasian in there to reassemble what he took apart painstakingly and cleaned up all the grease and oil and dirt. So I guess maybe they sent him to take a bath by the young Caucasian guy with his, he's proud, he's got his chest out, he's smiling, he's happy, and he's putting things together and, showing his genius, So, but a lot of us, if that's all you see on TV, you didn't have a daddy in the house, no way, you think, well, hell, that job ain't for me anyways. And you might be the genius in the room.
That's right.
And that's what they're really setting us up for. But we do have the freedom to have our own. Honorable Elijah Muhammad did it. Imam W.D. Muhammad did it. And so we can support our own and we can have our own, but we don't mind gambling on our future. But that's a bad thing. So, alhamdulillah. Outside of that, Imam Muhammad talked about it, the Savior's Day celebration, and it's evolution. I was trying to put out there what struck me. I put it up on the website. I guess I can read some of it. What he said about the Savior's Day, and I felt it was probably the most valuable thing to me. That's on Facebook, ain't it? Where is that? Yes. We talking about Facebook. That's probably the quickest route to get to it. The site. I can get to the site quicker.
Yeah.
It's still on Facebook too, man.
Yeah, but you have to scroll for quite a while.
Oh, the button. It's just it's at the flyer. I'm looking at it now. Savior's Day program. Yeah, but anyway, he said something to the effect that they were celebrating, and he said it was at a sister's house on the south side of Chicago, and the house was poorly lit. So just like anything, African American people remembering that past. I'm gonna go with you. I'm not gonna find it quick. What we identify with are things that we were introduced to after being brought here. We need to look at how many things that we were introduced to ourselves and how many things that we identify with as being, African American or being American. Where's our American identity lie? And as African American people, I think in our hearts of hearts, our identity lies most in our humanity. That if the world will acknowledge our humanity and our goodness and our human decency, that we will be happy. And we are happy to say that we're Americans. We have family members that served in military and wars, in the World War II, maybe even back that far, in Vietnam and things like that. So we identify with the politics also of the country, and now our identity is Muslim. And since I didn't almost coming up on a century of being Muslims in America, that we identify as Muslims, as African Americans that come through slavery, and we're Muslims. So, but now we have more Muslims in politics. They say more in what is it, in the Congress, right, than in the history of America. Yeah, and there's a lot of Muslims and also women, and that we all identify with this history, and it's a proud part of our history to identify with, and it's a great part. But still, you know, it's kind of like you born in this neighborhood. Before you was born in this neighborhood in Chicago or in this town, on the south side of Chicago, in whatever neighborhood, whatever the demographics is of black, Polish, Latino, whatever community you're born in, you got a mom and daddy that you was born to, you know, and that's who you are, you know. And I would think that our identity with our community and what our community had to go through, the struggles we had to go through to arrive here, and the sincerity of our leaders, you know, that's a really more powerful basis. And I think a lot of our youth are really missing out on something. And they say you can't miss what you never had. And I think that's a big issue with a lot of young people. They don't go back to their roots. Even the common American, you can't make your religion money and capitalism. You know, who got the best car, who got the highest paying job, or who got the latest this or following the latest trend. That leaves people hollow and empty. That you have to have a self-esteem, a self-image of who you are, you know. And just saying I'm a human being, that's good enough. That's good enough, but that's not good enough to compete with nations and tribes and groups of people that have been here and have take their history back thousands of years, you know, to like the Jews, they identify strongly with their history with Moses, you know, and Christians don't identify in the same way, but there are a lot of Africans and European tribes that they can tell you their ancestry and how strong they identify with their ancestral history. And can't nobody lie to them about their self-worth, you know. And my father, he was one person that I knew to have probably the highest self-esteem, you know, I'm biased, I'm his son, of any person I've ever met. And when I look at the meager, you don't have to have a great history. You don't have to be part of that group of people that conquered Rome. Who was the what do you call it? You know, the group, the people that I can't think of the name of them. You know, the steppe of Europe or wherever. The Mongolians. Yeah, you don't have to be a member of the Mongolian tribe or the whatever tribe. There's also a lot of powerful historic tribes in Africa that have greatness, but you talk about them and most of the association with them being warring tribes fighting with one another, great builders. But what Imam Mohammed, he's talking about the Nation of Islam, poor black people up from slavery in the South, and they had little to nothing materially, and his sound like might have been the most greatest memory of his life was sharing a sweet potato pie in a poorly lit room that was lit by a fire, a candle fire, or oil lamp. I think he said an oil lamp, and with no music. He didn't say nothing about there was music or drums being played or bells and beads and, you know, dancing and stomping like we see the Indians and the African tribes. He just said that we were Muslims together, and about 30 of us, and man, mother, father, and child. He said he was 9 or 10 years old at the time, and he said that was the happiest time he could remember in the Nation of Islam. To celebrate. So what we give our youth as identity, we not in the living rooms of the rest of America, what the Italians or families that are immigrants from French or German or whoever, and what the Nigerians, we see a lot of them in our neighborhoods and other African groups. We don't know what they saying to their kids. You know, what type of self-esteem they build. But I guarantee you, they're giving them something that's unique and that is intended to build that person's character from very small. As soon as they can understand what, what they are and who they are, they give them an identity, and that's what our children are lacking. That's why when they go, they gone. A lot of them, I mean, not gone, but gone from what we think should be their identity. They don't leave you, but they leave the history behind, and it's a shame that African American. I still say it. Some people might not agree with me, but I didn't come. I was blessed to be different. So different so that I'm born and raised, never lived anywhere, had an address outside of Chicago. I'm in the south suburbs of Chicago now, and I'm an American. I never even lived away from, I've been outside the United States for a week or two and back, so I'm about as African American, Black American as you can. I had a person ask me, how long have I been here? Was I here I said, my daddy was born in America. He's in Detroit, in the ghetto. I said, he's a Depression child in the 30s in Detroit, and he was born a Muslim. Now, I'm a Muslim, and I was born Muslim. I'm as black as they come. I said, I can't tell you how black I am. You might not understand. But I got some friends that I come up with, ask them. They might tell you. But, it's just amazing. So I know I'm different. And I know that my children are different. We look, act different, speak different. And so I have a little bias, and I can't understand how black people go and pray to a white man as God. I don't know how they do that. And I know that's what they do, because that's the first thing come out their mouth. And then what I want to ask them is that, who are you talking about? Are you, when you say that, are you seeing a black face, which is just as bad? You can paint them black as coal. It's still the white man. I don't get it, because I ain't from that, so I'm different. So that identity thing, that we have to be free to make our own choices. But if your mind is locked up, you don't even have the freedom to make your own choices, And I think that's our situation, and the situation of the violence and all these things that are really exaggerated as being and promoted through Hollywood, because we have a life also that's shaped and formed by popular culture, with TV, radio, Hollywood, and all of that. So a lot of that is at our detriment. But I strongly believe that if we could get that courage back, and I don't see it nowhere. People talk about the Nation of Islam. They get a lot of help. They promote it, and I think the reason they promote them is because they never want to see us free in the way that my father, Imam Warithudeen Mohammed, envisioned us as a free people in America. The equality is something that people in power don't want to see, and so they have to recondition the minds of the populace, the populations. They might have to be reconditioned to be narrow-minded. They were coming out of that, and now they want to put people back in it. But Allah has a plan, and Allah, He's going to allow what His plan is to be the ultimate plan that's going to succeed. And I truly believe that Allah wants to see humanity in a better condition, because that's a trend for goodness to overcome all of these weaknesses that we have as societies. And I believe the goodness, I can't point it out, tell you which side it's going to come from, or how it's coming, or how fast it's coming, or if I'll ever see it. But I believe ultimately the goodness is going to be what we see far greater than the evils that we see that are being used to really continue to humiliate and damage the self-esteem and the psyche of African Americans to keep us out of the competition. because even now, even that desire is an irrational desire to have a need to have a people that you can look down on, you know. But they promote that jealousy and envy in the common people, you know. It's promoted everywhere, and usually when you know the evils that are going on in the society, all you have to do is look at a black community and see the evils in that black community. That is the microcosm of what they hope the total society will be, so that ultimately they can keep the majority of people enslaved. You know, that's Satan's plan. When I say they, Satan and his hosts. I'm not talking about no particular people. I'm talking about Satan and his hosts. That they have a plan to defeat God's plan, you know, but they don't have the power. So, alhamdulillah, that's enough of that, I believe. So we're promoting. Oh, we have our sister program today. And let's see what time. We got good time. So thank everyone. We appreciate you all's support, and we get great support. But people, one thing I don't have an issue with it, but I was promoting a while ago. I said, wow, in this time of technology where human interaction is real important, sober human interaction. Because they say, well, people get together, and some of the stuff I see them doing and the behavior they come out, even when they go into worship, it's been, there's tribes and there's groups, even Muslim groups, that they worship is, you know, at a glance, some of it might be called, you can call it insanity, you know. There's a lot of violence and a lot of over extreme emotionalism and all that. So not just coming together, but coming together sensible, which is what the people that run this world we live in do. They have boardrooms and board meetings, and nobody disrespects another person, and everybody knows their place, and everybody is respected for their role and their place. That's what civilized societies look like, and that's what African American people don't have. You know, if we're not at a sports game or a party or something, you don't see too many of us, or at some place, you know, whining and complaining about problems and being pitiable, doing things, but planning. But I think that's all going to change, because now, if the leaders, like Imam Mohammed said, if the leaders will take their responsibility and give the people direction, you have to give your children, your house direction, or they will lose the focus. Majority of our knowledge or education, spiritual education in our life is not just words. It's communication and interaction with other people. And I was talking about Jummah. I was like, the Jummah for Muslims is something that the Prophet, peace and prayers be on him, promoted for us as being the best day in the year, you know, that there's so much spiritual significance in the day Friday, and, you know, all leading up to the reason why it was chosen as the day, you know, throughout the evolution of the human soul, the human being, that God chose that day for us to be the special day. That is almost inescapable. It's, the word itself means, right, to come together, or gather, you know. So I don't know. It's a good thing, but I think our prayer is not just a gathering. It's not a room or audience. We stand toe to toe and shoulder to shoulder. So I don't think it's, you know, we should be careful. I understand people want to promote their programs on the internet. You have Jummah on the internet, and you can see the khutbah. That's good. That helps that imam. That advances him. I'm not getting no sound. Oh. It advances that community, but it's not. I think the Jummah and our prayer, the thing that makes us different from anyone else, because we don't have symbolism. I'm quoting my father now. He said the only real way you know a Muslim is by our form of prayer. Otherwise, we look like everybody else, you know, because everything else you might think is Muslim, but that's your culture and your taste. But what makes us different is our form of prayer, and it's unescapable. You can't just start doing this and say you made salat. Our prayer is the Quran, and you cannot add words to the prayer or take words from the prayer. It's almost something that Allah gave us as a gift to help us identify with our created, our nature, our natural humanity, as creation. You know, like we see the sunrise. Our prayer is kind of like that. Like it don't go off course. It don't now decide, well, tomorrow I'm gonna rise from the west, you know, and then set in the east. It follows that particular course, and that's how our salat is. It's something that you can't corrupt or change. So as far as prayer, as far as Jummah, I wouldn't encourage, you know, person to stay home. If you can make it to Jummah, you go to Jummah. You know, I do what I do because I have unique circumstances. A lot of my witnesses, you wouldn't, if I told you half the stuff, that even the people that love me to death, you know, I can mention a person's name. A lot of times I don't ask how people doing because they go get that person. I say, I mean, you to go get him? Why you bother that man? Like handing me the phone. You asked, I forgot I asked about him. You know, so I got some strange stuff that happened. My life ain't like everybody else. And people come after my children from all type of corners and all kind of directions. So, you know, most of the time I'm guarding the gate the best of my ability and trying to manage time. And you should do it too. If you can be more productive, be more productive. You know, Allah said that the person that take care of that holy man, all he do is pray and stay in the masala and levitate, you know. If that's all he doing, I hope they pay him to do that because you better than him. If that fool ain't getting paid, something wrong with him. So a lot of them, I understand, that's their livelihood. That's their bread and butter. But I don't take a dime. Y'all probably don't believe me, but I don't. I still don't. And I relieve myself of the duty of being an employee of the Mosque Cares many years, actually before I met my wife. And then eventually, I think we were together when I emancipated myself. Because I was like, I don't want to be on the charity. Because I felt a spirit of people thinking that, you know, they should look to my father, you know, for a job or something. I'm like, even what he lost, his father built. A lot of people think Malcolm X built the wealth that they referred to when Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed as an empire, you know. But we know it was the nation. It was the poor black men and women that support the Mosque Cares today. A lot of them passed away, but it was poor people. And Imam Muhammad, he spoke on the poor people. People, if they can, they'll steal the credit from anybody, straight from the grave. If they could, they'd take credit as if they did something. They ain't did a doggone thing. You know. So, but I don't say no. I'm not a bragger because we know Allah is watching all of us. So I'm real careful about what I say. I don't brag about nothing. Yeah, but that's what's important, is for us to keep our identity and pass it on to the future generations. I believe. Alhamdulillah. And inshallah, Allah will bless us and we'll be successful. And, okay. Ramadan in April, right? I mean in May 24th. So the next time we'll be promoting the program, and I think a lot. When I think about it, Facebook is dynamite. Yeah. And when I look, I don't understand, but I must be doing something good. But I'm still the most popular. I am on Facebook. Yeah, on Facebook. So that means the believers, because I don't want people being jealous and envious of me. I said the believers are here. They the followers that follow Imam Muhammad, and people. Many times people say, well, we don't think they should follow his son, but a lot of believers in the community follow the leadership that I've held since the passing of my father, and they appreciate me. I thank Allah for them, and I thank Allah for their support. And because I wouldn't be up here if they didn't, I'd be sitting down there. So don't let nobody think that the people, that the believers are not still with us. They with us. And Facebook is a great tool to show you that, you know, to show you how many people like you and how many people are viewing and watching your programs. But I think the more important, no matter how good the technology is, it's more important to have your body present, to get up and do something. And you set the example for leadership for the young people, to let the young people know that they should get together for something that's going to advance their future, that's good, and that's something that Allah approves of. It's not just television, because they a lot of the young people, they're afraid. They're afraid, so they rather than to think for themselves, they follow blindly whatever they think is popular. And I guarantee you, the most popular thing is always going to be what is put out there in the pop culture, TV, radio, and media. It's not going to be what's good for you and good for your future. So, alhamdulillah, thank
It's all
you.
about money.